3:23 a.m. Wednesday. The phone shattered the silence. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Now hit that like button if you enjoy stories about karma. And let me tell you how this all started, because sometimes the best revenge is just letting people reveal exactly who they really are. My son Daniel's voice, strained and gasping. "Mom, something's wrong, my chest." The line died. At Mercy General, a doctor with tired eyes delivered the news. Sudden cardiac event. My vibrant 44-year-old boy was gone. My daughter-in-law, Cassandra, stood beside me in the harsh fluorescent light. Her face was a mask of shock. But as she turned from the doctor, her eyes caught mine. For a fraction of a second, they were dry, sharp, and calculating. It was gone in a blink, replaced by a practiced tremble. Grief plays tricks, I told myself. What happens now? My voice sounded foreign, small. Cassandra straightened, smoothing her already perfect blouse. "Now we face reality, Evelyn." Her tone was cool, procedural. "I'm his wife. I'll handle things." The next 3 days were a blur of terrible decisions. I offered to help plan the service. I was his mother. "I know what he would have wanted," she said, her voice leaving no room for discussion. I retreated, writing a eulogy with shaking hands in his old bedroom, surrounded by the ghost of his childhood. The photos on the dresser caught my eye. Daniel at university, Daniel and Cassandra's wedding, Daniel with friends, but none of us together from the past few years. The frames that had held them were empty, leaving faint dust outlines on the wood, a quiet erasure. The funeral was a flawless performance. Elegant lilies, his favorite guitar piece. Cassandra played the devastated widow beautifully, accepting condolences with a delicate, trembling hand. But as I stood numb in the receiving line, I overheard her, her voice low behind a massive floral arrangement. "The life insurance payout is substantial," she murmured to her brother, Marcus. "It clears the mortgage for years, and once the extra burden is gone, the cash flow will be—" "Extra burden?" My breath hitched. Marcus's voice followed. "And Evelyn? What's the plan there?" Cassandra's reply was a cold, clean whisper. "Not my problem. She's an adult. She'll manage." The words were ice water. I'd sold my own place 2 years ago to help them with the down payment. "Just until you find a perfect senior community, Mom," Daniel had promised. I'd stayed, cooking meals, tending the garden, feeling useful, loved. Now I was an extra burden on a spreadsheet. "Evelyn," Cassandra appeared at my elbow, her public mask of sorrow perfectly affixed. A gentle hand on my arm. "Could you help me in the kitchen for a moment? There's something we need to discuss." I followed her, my legs moving on autopilot. The kitchen door clicked shut, sealing us in. The comforting hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. She turned. The sorrow vanished from her face, leaving something smooth and impenetrable. "I need the house to myself," she stated, no preamble, "to grieve properly, without complications." I stared. "Complications?" "You, living here." She folded her arms. "It's not working anymore. I need my space, my privacy." The world tilted. "Cassandra, please, Daniel is gone." The finality in her voice was absolute. "You have until tomorrow evening to pack your things and leave." The floor seemed to fall away. This wasn't grief talking, this was a cold, premeditated eviction. I was being removed from my son's life and my home, like clutter. I stood frozen, the echo of her words "tomorrow evening" bouncing off the sterile kitchen tiles. But beneath the shock, a single, fierce thought ignited. What else had my son seen in her that I had missed? The kitchen's silence was deafening after she left. Tomorrow evening. The words echoed, a death sentence for the life I knew. I packed that night, not with care but with a numb, mechanical desperation. 68 years condensed into 4 suitcases in 2 cardboard boxes. As I folded a sweater Daniel gave me for Christmas, I listened for her footsteps on the stairs, for a softening, for a single word of regret. The house remained silent, listening to my grief. At exactly 6 p.m. the next day, she appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Time's up, Evelyn." My sanctuary, the room with the morning sun that Daniel said was perfect for my reading chair, was now just a sterile guest room again. "I need a few more minutes to load the car. I'll help you." It wasn't an offer, it was an escort to the border of her new kingdom. We made 3 trips to my aging sedan in total silence. The only sounds were the crunch of gravel under our feet and the heavy thud of my life being packed away. As I placed the final box in the trunk, I turned. A last foolish hope flickered. "What did I do, Cassandra? Just tell me what I did wrong." She didn't blink. "You didn't do anything. You were just there, in the way." Daniel felt a sense of obligation. I don't share that weakness. The cruelty was so naked it was almost refreshing. No more pretense. I got into the driver's seat, the worn fabric familiar under my hands. I rolled down the window. "Will there be a formal reading of his will?" Her laugh was short, incredulous. "His will? Why on earth would he leave you anything? You never contributed a dime to this household." The memory of the banker's check for $42,000, the one that cleared the path for this very house, flashed before my eyes. The irony was a bitter pill. She'd either forgotten or rewritten history entirely. "Of course," I said quietly, starting the engine. Silly of me to ask. I drove to the Budget Inn on Route 7. The room was a cube of despair, air thick with chemical cleaners, a painting of generic flowers bolted to the wall, the faint, perpetual hum of the ice machine down the hall. I sat on the stiff bedspread, the polyester squeaking under my weight. In the dark, reflective window, a stranger stared back, a widow, childless, homeless, a burden discarded. But as the deep night wore on, a new feeling cut through the despair. Not hope exactly. It was sharper, a cold, clear sense of anticipation. Cassandra thought the game was over. She believed she'd neatly removed the final complication. She had no idea what my son was truly capable of. The call came 2 weeks later, just as my savings hit a frightening low. "Evelyn? James Henderson, Daniel's attorney. The will is being read tomorrow. Your presence isn't just requested, it's mandatory." The law offices of Henderson and Associates were all polished oak and hushed importance. At 1:50 p.m., I watched from my car as Cassandra emerged from a sleek silver sedan. Her black dress was couture, her posture one of poised ownership. Her brother Marcus, in a suit that cost more than my car, followed, typing urgently on his phone. When I entered the waiting area, her smile froze, then melted into a sneer. "What is she doing here?" she demanded of the young receptionist. "All named beneficiaries are required, Mrs. Reed," the receptionist replied smoothly. "Both of us?" Cassandra's voice was sharp. "Apparently so." Marcus placed a calming hand on her arm, whispering something that made her jaw tighten. She took a seat as far from me as possible, the air between us crackling with frost. At precisely 2, Mr. Henderson, a man with kind eyes and a grandfatherly demeanor, welcomed us into his office. We sat in a tense triangle before his broad desk. "I'll read the will in full," he began, his voice respectful but firm. Daniel was exceptionally clear in his final wishes. The first part was a recitation of Cassandra's victory, The house, the cars, the retirement accounts, the substantial life insurance policy. With each item, she gave a slight, satisfied nod, her eyes darting to me as if to say, "See, this is what matters." I kept my hands folded, my breathing even. I expected nothing. I was braced for nothing. Then Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses, his tone shifted, becoming deliberate. There is, however, a final, separate provision, added by Daniel 4 months ago. The atmosphere in the room thickened. Cassandra stopped nodding. Marcus put down his pen. "To my mother, Evelyn Reed," Mr. Henderson read, his words precise in the quiet room, "I bequeath the sole contents of Safety Deposit Box V112 at Liberty Federal Bank, along with all documentation and instructions contained therein. Access is granted to her and her alone." Cassandra shot to her feet. "What safety deposit box? He never told me about any box." "It was a private arrangement," Mr. Henderson replied calmly. "What's in it?" Marcus demanded, his lawyer's instincts on high alert. "I do not know the contents. My role was to ensure the instruction was legally binding and executed." "This is outrageous," Cassandra's voice climbed. "If it's assets, they're part of the marital estate. We'll contest this." "You are free to try," Mr. Henderson said, unflustered. He turned to me, holding out a long, sealed envelope. "Evelyn, these are the bank documents and Daniel's key. He requested you access it promptly." My fingers trembled as I took it. The envelope felt heavy with finality. In the parking lot, she cornered me by my dented sedan. "Be reasonable, Evelyn." The false sweetness was back, laced with panic. "Whatever he's left you, we should share it. He'd want his wife to be cared for." I met her gaze, the envelope held securely against my chest. "You told me he'd leave me nothing, that I'd never contributed. Why the sudden change of heart?" Her mask slipped, revealing the steel beneath. "Don't be naive. You're in a budget motel. You need resources. I'm offering a compromise." A calm I hadn't felt in years settled over me. "Actually, Cassandra," I said, unlocking my car door, "I don't think I need a thing from you." Her eyes locked onto the envelope in my hand, hungry and furious. "This isn't over." 3 days later, I stood in the bank vault's silent, cool air, the lawyer's envelope in my hand. As the manager slid the long metal box toward me, a chill of premonition ran down my spine. My son hadn't just left me an inheritance, he'd left me a secret. The bank vault was a cathedral of cold, silent metal. Mrs. Alvarez, the manager, was expecting me. "Box V112 is one of our larger units," she said softly as the heavy door hissed open. "Your son rented it 5 years ago. He visited quite regularly." 5 years. The timeline struck me like a physical fact. This wasn't a last-minute thought. With both keys turned, the long metal drawer slid out smoothly. It was deep and surprisingly heavy. In the privacy room, my hands shook as I lifted the lid. On top lay a letter in Daniel's familiar looping script. "Mom, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And by now, Cassandra has likely shown you exactly who she is. I'm sorry for that, but I'm not surprised. I've known for years, and I've been preparing." A sob caught in my throat. I forced myself to read on. "You gave us $42,000 for the house. You called it a gift, but I always knew it was your safety net. I've been investing it for you, adding to it when I could, for 5 years. What's in these accounts isn't just your money back, it's your future." Beneath the letter were neat folders. I opened the first. Investment portfolios, bank statements, all in my name. My eyes blurred over the numbers, struggling to find the bottom line. When I found it, my breath stopped. $192,000. The number seemed to glow on the page. A fortune, a life raft. She claims you contribute nothing, the letter continued, but our mortgage has been paid automatically from my salary since you moved in. Every cent you ever gave us went right here, into these accounts. I also started documenting things, Mom. Everything. It's all in the folder marked Records. You should know the truth about the person you lived with. With trembling fingers, I opened the second, thicker folder. Printed emails, text message screenshots, credit card statements, a meticulous, heartbreaking archive of casual cruelties and calculated plans, including discussions about my eventual relocation dated over a year ago. Daniel had seen it all. The final paragraph of his letter undid me completely. Take this. Build a beautiful life where no one can ever make you feel unwanted again. And Mom, don't tell Cassandra a single word until you're safely away from her, please. Trust me one last time. All my love, Daniel. I sat in that silent room for a long time, the weight of his love and his quiet war settling onto my shoulders. He hadn't just left me money, he'd handed me the truth, and with it the power to reclaim my story. As I left the bank, my phone rang. The screen flashed. Cassandra. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hello? Evelyn. Her voice was cloying, layered with false concern. I was thinking, we got off on the wrong foot. Let me make you lunch tomorrow. We can talk, woman to woman. I looked at the folder in my passenger seat, a vault of secrets more powerful than any amount of money. A slow, steady calm filled me. The fear was gone. Lunch sounds perfect, I said, my voice even. I'll see you at noon. I ended the call. It was time for the grieving widow to meet the woman she'd thrown away and to learn that the quiet mother-in-law she'd underestimated was now holding all the cards. As I set the table in my modest new apartment that evening, I rehearsed the conversation to come, but I wasn't preparing pleas or apologies. I was preparing revelations. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just return to her house. I would dismantle her entire world, piece by carefully documented piece. At noon the next day, I stood on the porch of the house I'd once called home. The door swung open, and there was Cassandra, draped in a cream linen dress that whispered of money. Her smile was a perfect, practiced curve. Evelyn, I'm so glad you came. The air around her smelled of expensive perfume and the faint lemony scent of polish. She ushered me into the dining room where her wedding china gleamed under the crystal chandelier. A bowl of tomato bisque, my favorite, steamed at my place setting. The performance was meticulous. We made brittle small talk, the unseasonable warmth, the neighbor's new landscaping. The clink of silverware against fine porcelain was the only punctuation in her carefully orchestrated calm. Finally, she set her spoon down. About the safety deposit box, she began, her tone softening into false intimacy. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Family should stick together, especially now. Family, I echoed, taking a slow sip of iced tea. That's an interesting word to choose. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but her smile held. What did you find in there, Evelyn? Maybe we can manage it together. I have excellent financial advisors. I met her gaze. Why do you assume it's something to be managed? A flicker of impatience. Well, it's assets, isn't it? Daniel was so secretive. He was private, I corrected gently. There's a difference. Privacy is for protection. Secrecy is for shame. I let the words hang in the fragrant air. I did bring you something, though. Her eyes lit with greedy curiosity as I pulled the small wrapped gift from my bag. She tore the paper away to reveal the framed photo of Daniel at his college graduation. For a moment, genuine emotion softened her features. Nostalgia, or perhaps loss. It's lovely, she said, her voice momentarily unguarded. I thought you should have it. After all, you were such a devoted wife. The emphasis landed, her head snapped up, the softness vanishing. What's that supposed to mean? Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone. Daniel was a thorough man. He believed in keeping records. I turned the screen toward her, displaying a crystal-clear screenshot of a text thread with her sister from 8 months prior. Cassandra. God, I can't wait until we finally have the house to ourselves. Her room will make a perfect yoga studio, soon. The color drained from Cassandra's face. She lunged instinctively for the phone, but I withdrew it smoothly. There are dozens more, I continued, my voice conversational. Emails about your long-term planning. Credit card statements that tell a very different story from the one you sold Daniel. He saw everything, Cassandra. He documented everything. Her composure was cracking, fine lines of panic showing through the porcelain facade. He had no right to spy on my private conversations. He had every right to protect his mother from the woman who was planning her eviction before his body was even cold. I placed my phone down and slowly, deliberately slid the thick folder from my bag onto the gleaming table between us. It landed with a soft, final thud. She stared at it as if it were a live thing. "What is that?" I said, simply. "The truth. 5 years of it." In his own handwriting, he called it the records. I didn't touch it. I just let it sit there, a silent, devastating bomb on her perfect linen tablecloth. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. All pretense of the gracious hostess was gone, stripped away by raw, exposed fear. "What do you want from me, Evelyn?" I leaned back, the gentle tap of my fingernail on the table, the only sound in the opulent, silent room. "It's not about what I want, Cassandra. It's about what Daniel wanted. And he wanted me to know exactly who I was living with. Shall we open the folder together?" "It's not about what I want, Cassandra. It's about what Daniel wanted." I let my hand rest on the folder, and he wanted me to know exactly who I was living with. I opened the cover. The first document on top was a bank statement, clearly showing the automated mortgage payments from Daniel's salary account, spanning the entire 24 months I'd lived there. I slid it across the table. Her eyes scanned it, her face tightening. The mortgage was never a burden, it was already budgeted. The financial strain you used to sigh about at dinner? A fiction. Before she could speak, I placed another page next to it, a printed email chain between her and Marcus. The subject line read, "Long-term strategy for EV." I tapped a highlighted paragraph. "This is where you discuss the optimal timeline for my departure." And here, I pointed further down, where Marcus suggests exploring a competency petition to manage my assets if I become difficult, dated over a year ago. Her breath hitched, a sharp, shallow sound. "That was just theoretical. You never got the chance," I finished, my voice cool. "You never got the chance because Daniel found it." I felt a quiet, solid thrill, the kind that comes not from cruelty, but from finally standing on bedrock instead of quicksand. I revealed the next layer, the investment summaries. "The $42,000 I gave you for this house, Daniel treated it as a loan he'd been quietly repaying with interest for 5 years. I let her see the totals, the growing balances. He invested it for me. Every gift you assumed was absorbed into your life was actually being safeguarded in mine." Her eyes locked onto the final number. $192,000, she whispered, the figure sounding like a death knell. "The money you thought was a gift," I said, holding her gaze, "was always my safety net. He just made sure it grew." The final document I placed before her was the credit card statement from the month before Daniel's death. I pointed to the highlighted transactions: a spa weekend, a designer boutique, airline charges for a trip to Vegas. The total was a staggering $16,450. All while you told him we needed to tighten our belts because my presence was a financial drain, I said, my calm now a deliberate, forceful thing. "You weren't planning a future with him, Cassandra. You were funding a future without him, and without me." The fight left her body in a visible rush. Her shoulders slumped, her carefully postured spine seemed to collapse. She sank back into her chair as if the air had been let out of her. The polished, formidable woman was gone, replaced by someone hollow and exposed. I can't lose everything," she stammered, her voice breaking into an ugly, raw whisper. "You haven't lost everything," I said, standing. I gathered the powerful pages back into their folder. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard a soft, broken sound, not a sob, but the quiet collapse of a carefully constructed world. The victory felt hollow walking to my car, the afternoon sun too bright. I had my truth, my money, my freedom, but as I drove away, a new nagging thought arose. Had my son's protection ended with that folder, or were there more secrets and more dangers still waiting in the wings? Walking away from that house felt like crossing a border into a new country. The clean afternoon sun warmed my skin, feeling different than it had just an hour before, lighter, less oppressive. My first stop wasn't the Budget Inn. It was the leasing office for The Cedars, a quiet, garden-style apartment complex I'd admired for years. With a certified check from my new account, I signed a lease for a sunny one-bedroom on the ground floor, overlooking a patch of lavender. It was mine. The move was swift. My few boxes and suitcases looked lost in the empty space at first. But as I unpacked, placing Daniel's photo on the mantel, hanging my favorite print of the sea, filling the kitchen with my own groceries, the sterile space began to breathe. The scent of fresh coffee and the lavender from outside my open window mingled into a new, peaceful scent. Home. I met with the financial advisor Mr. Henderson recommended. We moved the investments into stable, income-generating funds. The monthly statements that now came to my address were not sources of dread, but of quiet assurance. I joined the community book club, my voice a little rusty at first from disuse. I began volunteering at the local library, shelving novels in the peaceful hush of the stacks. One afternoon, as I carefully placed a worn copy of a classic back in its rightful spot, a profound warmth settled in my chest. Daniel's love had been a shield, and now it was the foundation for a life I was building for myself, brick by simple, joyful brick. A few weeks later, I drove past the old house. A large for sale sign stood stabbed into the perfect lawn. I didn't slow down. The sight sparked no pain, only a distant recognition, like passing a landmark from a long-finished journey. My peace felt deep and final. Daniel had posthumously kept his promise, and I was finally living in the security he'd crafted. Then the letter came. It was nestled between a gardening catalog and a utility bill, its crisp, expensive parchment paper feeling alien in my hands. The return address made my blood run cold. Law offices of Marcus Thorne, Esquire, Cassandra's brother. With careful fingers, I sliced it open. The language was coldly formal, a web of legal terms that distilled into a stark threat. It alleged a verbal profit-sharing agreement between Marcus and Daniel regarding investment strategies, and demanded an accounting and disbursement of a fair share of the accrued growth from my accounts. It was a blatant, desperate shakedown, a final guttural grab from the ruins of Cassandra's defeat. A cold knot formed in my stomach. The fear was instinctive, but it was quickly met with a newer, stronger reflex, a slow, burning anger. They weren't done. The battle I thought was over had just shifted to a new, more treacherous field. I placed the letter on my new kitchen table, its crisp edges stark against the warm wood. Marcus had just made a fatal mistake. He'd mistaken the quiet peace I'd built for weakness. He was about to learn that a mother armed with the truth and her son's meticulous records was the most formidable opponent of all. I brought Marcus's letter straight to Mr. Henderson. His kind eyes turned steely as he read it. "This is intimidation, plain and simple," he said. "But we won't just defend. We'll counterattack." Together, we constructed a response that was more than a rebuttal. It was a guided missile. We included not just the evidence of Marcus advising Cassandra on the competency petition, but also bank records showing he had received consulting fees from joint marital funds for dubious advice. We drafted a formal complaint to the state bar. Finally, we prepared a civil suit for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The package we sent to Marcus's office was thick, final. Each page I added felt like fitting another piece of armor into place. This wasn't just paperwork, it was a fortress built from Daniel's foresight. The silence that followed was absolute. No response, no further demands. Through the quiet grapevine of mutual acquaintances, I learned Cassandra sold the house quickly, below market value, and moved to another state. Marcus left his firm not long after. The battle was over. On a bright, crisp morning, I visited Daniel's grave. I brought white tulips, his favorite. The granite stone was cool under my fingertips as I traced his name. The air smelled of cut grass and distant rain. "You kept your word, my wonderful boy," I whispered, a soft smile touching my lips. "You gave me back my future." The greatest gift wasn't the money, it was the proof, tangible in spreadsheets and saved texts, of his relentless love and perception. He had seen the storm coming and built me an ark. My new life settled into a rhythm of gentle contentment. I felt whole, unshakable. Weeks later, I was leaving the library after my volunteer shift, the setting sun painting the parking lot in long, golden shadows. As I approached my car, a sleek, unfamiliar sedan pulled in nearby, idling at the exit. The driver's window slid down with a quiet hum. A man's voice, smooth and freighted with a history I'd tried to forget, called out, "Evelyn, long time." I froze, my keys biting into my palm. I knew that voice. It belonged to a ghost from a past long before Daniel, before Cassandra, a past I'd sealed away decades ago. He wasn't here by accident. The peace I'd fought so hard for shimmered, threatened for the first time. But as my initial shock receded, a new, cold clarity rose in its place. I was no longer the woman who could be easily intimidated. I had survived betrayal, reclaimed my life, and wielded the truth like a weapon. I turned slowly to face him, my posture straight, my gaze steady. The game had changed, but so had the player. He stepped out of the car, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We need to talk about our son," he said. The world tilted. Our son. The two words unraveled my entire history in an instant. Daniel's protection ended one battle, but it seemed he'd left me prepared for a war I never saw coming.